And don't worry about the fact that you're not collecting as much data as you can on a night. There's always a circumstance in which you could have more and more data. So don't worry about that. Just focus on with... G'day guys, how you going? So today I thought I'd just talk a little bit about how I've changed my imaging in this last sort of 6 months or so. So yeah, look, when I started off imaging probably about 4 or so years ago, I increased the amount of gear that I had very, very quickly, to the point that I actually got to a stage where sometimes I was imaging occasionally with three rigs in a night. I had sort of my bigger rig, my medium rig, and my sort of small rig, if you like. And it kind of meant that I could take wider shots, mid-focal length shots, maybe a close-up shot of different things. And I guess I just wanted to talk about this because I think that it's probably a common thing that a lot of people who get into astrophotography do this quite early. They sort of ramp up their gear because, you get a bit excited about, well, imagine if I took one of those wide images, or imagine if I could get in really close on those galaxies. So then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, I've got a clear night. Maybe I've got no moon. Imagine if I could maximize this night and get as much data as I can. And I think some people can do that successfully, and that's cool. Like, I know people who can have 3 rigs out, and that's mainly what they do, and it really works for them well. For me personally, I'll just say I found it absolutely, after a while I started to find it exhausting, partially because I don't have an observatory. I do tend to leave one of my mounts permanently set up with a cover over it, but I don't have an observatory. But not only that, just the fact that you're kind of trying to remember everything that you've got to do for every single rig. And also you just fall into that trap of thinking, oh, if I get more, surely it's better. If I have 1 rig, then surely it's better if I have 2 rigs because I can collect more data. And then surely it's better if I have 3 rigs. And before you know it, you've kind of created this sort of saddle for your own back, whereby you're trying to get so much data that, and then of course with all that data comes all the processing, the calibration frames. You've got to take your rigs down and put them back on every night, and it just gets totally exhausting. So for me, it was starting to do the opposite of why I got into astrophotography. I was just getting to a point where I didn't really want to go out because it was the overhead in my head of, oh my God, setting up all those rigs. So I was sort of starting to resent the hobby a little bit. But for me personally, look, I reckon the way to get over this, or the way to get around this, for me, I just made a conscious decision that, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 1 rig set up. I'm not going to stress out about it. I'm just going to have 1 rig set up because, of course, you have things like work sometimes the next morning or whatever. And the last thing you want to do is just create this environment for yourself where, you're so stressed about all the rigs you've got running and all that kind of stuff that you end up feeling pretty bad the next day as well. So look, just out of my own sort of necessity here, what I've ended up doing now is I just go from 1 rig to the next, and I just have 1 rig going at once. So for example, right now, in Australia, we've got kind of the Milky Way up, so plenty of objects now getting up into the night sky. So I've kind of switched at the moment onto my Samyang 135 camera lens rig for wide photos. So just 135 millimeters. I've got the 533 one-shot color on it at the moment. So for me personally, firstly, going back to one-shot color helped because it makes me enjoy it more, and I didn't really want the overhead of all the filters and calibration frames and that. But secondly, this process of going through 1 rig at a time really helps for me. So what I tend to do now is I do it seasonally. So now I'll kind of be imaging with, like I said, this wide setup, this 135 setup, and I might use this for a month or 2. And before this, I was using my SV Bony one-shot color my SV Bony 700mm refractor with the reducer on it, so that's about 500mm. So I took a few images with that, like the Southern Tadpoles and the Pencil Nebula. And like I said, now I've moved on to this 135 setup, which is really nice. But the good thing is it allows you to focus and enjoy and concentrate on just doing one thing at a time. And for me personally, it fits in with my other hobbies as well, like, you know, whether it's a little bit of hiking or a bit of music. And it means I'm not putting all my energy and feeling totally exhausted by trying to have 3 rigs going at once, which just gets like so exhausting after a while. So look, it's just a little tip that if you're struggling like I was and you're feeling like it's a little bit too much, you know, you're getting to that point where it just feels like the setup is getting a bit too much for you if you're running multiple rigs. You know, one thing I'd recommend is just consider the time of year that you're in, and maybe just having one rig going for a period of time, like, and don't worry about the fact that you're not collecting as much data as you can on a night. There's always a circumstance in which you could have more and more data. So don't worry about that. Just focus on, with the equipment that I've got at the moment, am I enjoying the hobby? And, you know, am I enjoying the process as well of processing those images and spending a bit of time with those images, as opposed to just, can I collect as much data as I possibly can? So the same thing will happen to me. So towards the time of the year when you know, the Milky Way starts to go down, I'll probably switch on to my C925 long focal length rig, and I'll concentrate maybe on getting some images at longer focal lengths, like, you know, those galaxies, which I, you know, try and do every now and again. But this is a bit of a rant, but I guess the message here is, yeah, if you are like me, if you're getting to a point where you've found that your head's in too many places because you've got too much going on, there's definitely a lot of value in just concentrating on having one rig going at a time and enjoying that rig. You know, there might be an occasion, for example, if I'm off work or something, where I might push it and have 2 rigs going just for a few nights. But for me personally, like, for the most part, I just find having a single rig going is works really well for the way that I run my life, if that makes sense. So yeah, maybe give that a try if you're feeling a little bit of burnout, or if you're feeling a little bit stressed by your what you've got in terms of your imaging gear, because it's, like we all know, it's too easy to get too much gear, and then you feel like, well, I've got to justify all the gear now, so I've got to have it all going at once. So just the, you know, 10 cents of my thoughts this Sunday morning. Yeah, so hope you guys are getting some clear skies out there. I am not currently. It's raining today. But I hope you guys are getting some clear skies. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next one. So take care. Clear skies, everyone.